Ale, how you doing today?
Great, Greg. How are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty awesome. I'm excited to do this. It's been a while since I've hosted a Duckling Flags reveal. So starting tomorrow and then kind of running the next 8 weeks, we're going to be doing something. We call it a boot camp. It's not really a boot camp. We just kind of, it's like the Duckling seeds that we always do here on the Final Fantasy Randomizer Discord, except that we're going to be focusing on different styles of flag sets for newer runners, of course. And then hopefully by the end of the 8 weeks, you'll kind of know more about flags, about how to read flags, what to expect with certain flag sets, and so forth and so on.
Yeah, and over the course of the 8 weeks, we kind of ramping up the difficulty. So we wanted to start out with something that might be more familiar to people who are newer to the rando, but have some kind of vanilla game knowledge. And then we'll kind of spend 4 or 5 weeks kind of showing a couple different ideas there, doing a couple plays on different flag sets, hopefully teaching people something as they go along each week. Then we're going to cap it off with some pretty interesting flags that I think we'll wait for a few weeks to reveal and kind of run with at that point in time.
Yes, exactly. So these flags, we're going to have Darkmoon flip it over to go over the flags, and we're going to actually pull up the page. This is FinalFantasyRandomizer.com. This is what it looks like when you go there. So as you can see up at the top where it says seed, that's going to be the ROM that you end up creating, whereas the flags are the different settings. Basically. So the randomize button there that you see, you would click that to make your ROM, to make your new ROM. That doesn't mean you're randomizing anything. It just is how you create your ROM. And then under the presets, you'll see our improved vanilla, and then of course to the far right there you've got the Swiss flags, and then of course our bracket flags, which is part of our spring tournament that's currently going on. So, Al, I'll let you talk about what's shuffled here and kind of go over this stuff, and we'll keep it going.
Yeah, sure. And then you can pop in and correct me if I misspeak. So, starting on the left-hand side, so this is going to be our flag set that we're using for the week 1 of the Duckling boot camp, as it were. So starting on the left and working our way down. So random shops. That means all the shops in the game are kind of shuffled around. It's weapons shops, it's armor shop, and it's item shops with that particular flag. So you might normally find cat claws in Gaia. Well, hey, maybe you'll find a cat claw in Canaria. It also does include shuffling around where the vendor item falls. So instead of in vanilla where it's in the caravan, now it might be be over down in Elfland, or it might be in Crescent Lake in one of those item shops.
Yep. And I was going to say, with this is things that already appear in item shops. This is not random treasures. This is already things that happen to be in shops in the original game. That stuff will get shuffled. As you can see below that, random weapons and armor, that'll get random, obviously, weapons and armor into those shops.
Correct. And so we're not going to be playing with those flags at the current time just because we want to try and keep things somewhat vanilla-ish. So those two flags are off. But if you're feeling a little cheeky and you want to run with something like that, in your own flags, it's not kind of an async race like this Duckling seed is. Hey, more power to you. Turn on random weapons, turn on elite gear. Maybe you can find like a Masa in a shop, something like that.
That's always fun.
Oh, absolutely. So the next flag that we have turned on is magic level. So this shuffles up what level the spells are. So level 1, you might end up with Lit 2. You might end up with Ice 3. You might end up with Harm 2. You might end up with Wall or Life 2. So all the magic spells are just kind of shuffled around and then dumped into a shop. So there are no duplicate spells, so you're not going to have like Nuke in like levels 1 through 4, like at each level. Each spell will still only be represented once, just to keep all the shops kind of equivalent to where they are in vanilla with how many spells they can actually sell you. But the actual level of the magic is what we're changing up here. The next thing that we're changing up is the RNG table. So that's going to be kind of a pretty standard flag in a lot of the randomized seeds and flag sets that we run here. It just kind of changes things up from the vanilla game. So the vanilla game has its encounter table set, its RNG table set. This kind of shuffles it all around so that way every kind of seed plays differently, even within the same flag set. All right, so moving on to the right-hand side for the shuffle tab, we've got enemy scripts. So enemy scripts in the vanilla game are kind of linked to certain mobs. Obviously, the Gurmadusa has all its fun little scripts and non-hit effects and things like that. But we've taken that and we've kind of shuffled them to other people. So you might hear things over the course of the randomizer like, oh, we found the Medusa script. Well, That's just the most common script in the game. So when people start identifying that on non-Medusa monsters, that's how you can kind of start getting to the nitty-gritty of the game. We're not going to do that right now, though. We're not going to start calling out who has what scripts and whatnot. But just know that people are going to be using different skills and spells in scripts, as so like the percentage chance of using a skill or an ability or a spell will be different than they were in the vanilla game. And that leads into the next checkbox we have, which is the enemy skills and spells. So kind of piggybacking off of the scripts, this might mean something like, hey, those imps that were super friendly in the vanilla game, maybe they're a little bit meaner. Maybe they've got heat. Maybe they just want to stare at you. It all depends on what the seed rolls, and that particular flag box there is what's going to actually let them roll something fun that maybe they wouldn't have had in the vanilla game. Enemy status attacks is going to be all the on-touch or on-hit effects that the vanilla game monsters have. Those have all been kind of tossed into a hat and redistributed amongst the pool. So still the same number of status attacks for each particular category, but potentially different monsters have them. Maybe something could be vanilla, maybe it won't be. We'll never know until we actually go through and run the seed. Next flag that we've got on is the enemy unrunnable formation. So this kind of shuffles up what enemies you can and can't run from. So you might be familiar with the vanilla game. There's a couple of different packs within the vanilla game that you can never run from them, despite the game telling you, hey, run is an option. It never is. With some of the flags that we have further on down, you'll know if you can run from a pack or not. So this just kind of changes up which enemy packs that you can actually run from by making it a little bit more interesting. Like, hey, maybe imps will be unrunnable, so you always have to take imp battles when you find them. Enemy surprise bonus. What that's going to do is that's going to swap around how often enemies can ambush you and surprise you. And I believe it goes the other way too with how often you can get a preemptive strike on enemy packs. So it just kind of shuffles it up. So maybe, you might find a pack of a shark and sea hag pack on the ocean that always decides to ambush you, whereas in the vanilla game that may not have been the case. Shuffle encounter rarity is a real fun flag that I think a lot of people tend to keep on when they're running the game. So normally within the game you have about, I'm not going to get into the math of it, but you have a number of different enemy formations that can appear throughout either the overworld or throughout dungeons, and this kind of shuffles up how rare they might be. So I think we all know that our favorite T-Rex out near Mirage Tower, I believe he's like encounters 7 and 8.
Counter 8.
Is the encounter 8? Okay. So maybe he becomes encounter 1, and he becomes super common, so like every other fight's a T-Rex. So just kind of shuffles it up. So maybe the more rare mobs that you see, or the more rare fights that come out, they'll actually be a little bit more common, and maybe vice versa. And then the last big flag that we have on there is War Mech mode. So you can kind of force how you want War Mech to be in a seed. So you've got a couple different options within that drop down. We're going to keep it on vanilla for now, which kind of just restricts War Mech to being a random encounter on the Bridge of Destiny in the Sky Castle or Sky Palace or Sky Cave or whatever dungeon you want to call it. There are a couple other options, though, that do kind of put him elsewhere into the pool. So either walking around on the previous floor or possibly as a NPC guarding the bridge, so you always have to fight him. And then there's a fourth option, which puts them literally everywhere. But we're not going to be messing with that right now. We're just going to keep things kind of vanilla. If you get War Mech during a run, great. If not, hey, great. It's just like vanilla. You probably never even knew he was there.
Yeah, that's awesome, Mail. Thanks so much for that. So, and then now we're under the treasures and incentives here. So, as you'll see, this kind of tells you what's shuffled throughout the game or like what's in boxes. So, that first thing there, you've got treasures. That's all the treasures that are in boxes in the normal game. It, like you said, thrown into a hat and redistributed into different boxes. And then we have a newer flag called Better Trap Treasure. It moves certain decent items, good items, into certain boxes that are behind spike piles. That is the best way to describe it. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you'll find a ribbon behind a spike pile. Sometimes you may not. You just never know how that flag is going to work out. Main NPC items are going to be shuffled. So your main NPCs, of course, are the king, vendor item, Sarah. You've got Bicky. You've got Florida, and somebody else. The Sage.
It's the Waterfall Robot too.
Robot, yes. So those guys, all their stuff will be shuffled around, as well as your fetch quest rewards, that stuff will be shuffled as well. So your TNT, your adamant, your herb, your key, so forth and so on. Those things will get are going to get shuffled. So basically, what it means is that any NPC or fetch quest reward will net you something completely different or something random, as they say. Our freebies today, we've got a free bridge and we've got a free canal. So completely different than what we've been doing in spring tournament, where we make you find a loose canal. We are giving you that canal for free, and that's pretty exciting stuff. So go to the middle thing here. Well, the middle and the right. So you've got your locations, which are where you're going to find incentive items, and then you have your actual incentive items, which is there on the far right there. And if you do the math, you can take the 19, you can take the 18 out of the 19. That lets you know right now that there is going to be one loose item throughout here. So one item on the right side will be in a random box that is not part of what you see here in the center. So again, the main NPCs and the fetch quest NPCs I kind of already went over. Ice Cave is of course the floater chest, guarded by the eye. Ordeals is going to be the tail chest, which is not really guarded by the zombie Ds, but you got to go through them to get out of there. We've got a new incentive location, which is Titan's Trove. So you got to get the ruby in order to get there. It's the far left chest in that room where the Titan lives. And then lastly, you've got Canaria Lock, which is the TNT chest. It is the left room middle box, I think. Is it the left room or the right room? Yeah, it doesn't.
Left room, I believe it's the far right box.
Far right box. Well, it's whatever box that the TNT normally leads to. So this makes things kind of interesting because, as you can see, you're going to need the ruby in order to get one incentive item. So the ruby is its own kind of weird fetch quest. And then the key you're going to need to get, and not only to beat the game, but you're going to need that to check Canaria Locked. And then let's go on ahead and go to our incentive items. So as you can see, you got a list of them up at the top there. It just lets you know what all the different things are. Main progression items, your other quest items, things that aren't necessary for progression. And then, of course, you've got your floater, your canoe. Your ship is going to be in a box. Maybe.
Or an NPC potentially.
Or an NPC. Yeah, or an NPC potentially. Tail as well. And then lastly, we went on ahead and gave you a free massa. Not free, but you got to find it. But at least you don't have to check all like million boxes for a loose massa. You might get it from, from an NPC. We might get it from Sarah right away. We don't know.
That'd be a heck of a start to the seed.
All right, we're going to go on ahead and we'll talk about gold real quick. We don't have any of them on right now, but I can about it and tell you what any of this stuff means. Free orbs, of course, means that all the orbs are already lit, and you can just go right in. And I think Chaos Rush is just kind of the same thing. Like, don't have time for a long race? Just turn those flags on. You don't have to kill anybody. Just grind your levels, go beat the game. You're good to go. You got Treasure Hunt, which we will see at some point in time later on. I know that makes some people excited. We may have a treasure hunt in the next 8 weeks. Not tonight, but in the next 8 weeks. Basically replaces gold in chests with things called either shards or pieces or orbs or espers
or pigs, or there's any number of fun little words that can pop up and be your shards for that particular run.
Yeah, regular treasure hunt gives you 16 of those that you need to find. Extra treasure gives you any random number between, I think, 24 and 30 something or another.
Yeah, I believe it goes up to 32 or 36 for the high end.
Yeah, and then in treasure hunt, you can also kill the fiends to get pieces. So if you kill Lich and Carrie, you'll get 2 pieces for each of them. And if you kill Kraken and Tia, you get 4 pieces for them, for each of them. So...
and as was kind of pointed out, I believe in one of the Duckling channels on our Discord earlier on in the week, it's not necessarily killing the fiend that gives you the pieces. It's actually lighting that particular orb, because there are some flags that can kind of shuffle around where the fiends are at. So if you find, like, say, Tiamat and Lich's location, you still won't get the 4. You'll still just get the 2, even though it's technically a harder boss. So yeah, they're tied to the orbs that you would actually be lighting.
Yep.
But we'll talk about that later on when we do, if and when we do the shard hunt.
Yeah, and then lastly, you got alternative final boss, which gives you a mixture of 4 different final bosses besides Chaos, and then you've got Short and Topher with Fiend Tiles. Basically, instead of all of Topher, you just got one room, and you just gotta, and that's it. All the treasure chests that are throughout Topher are in a room. You can just check all 7 of those real quick, then hit up your Fiend Tiles, then go kill Chaos and or the alternative final boss. But again, none of that stuff's on. Let's keep it going. You can go on ahead and talk about some maps and routing.
Yep. So we've got on the left-hand side is our kind of illustrious, the fabled entrance slash town shuffle, with all their wonderful options where you can kind of make that as fun, air quotes fun, as much as you want. We're not running with that tonight. We'll talk more about that as we go in depth with these flags in the coming weeks. But just know they're there. Essentially, you can kind of change up what entrances link to what, even kind of what floors link to what floors. So there's a lot of randomization that comes from that, but you really want to kind of know your maps and get really comfortable with it before you kind of dive into that. I think that's a personal opinion. I've shared amongst a lot of the community members. Um, so going over to the middle column, we have isolated map edits. So these are some things that have been done to just kind of change up the game, either for a convenience sake or keep something fresh, or maybe kind of keep it from being so linear when you're doing all your fetch quest and quest item location checks. So the first one is the ordeals pillars. So unlike the vanilla game where I believe it was always the bottom pillar in a particular set that you would take, this changes up what pillars entirely you need in order to not only go through the maze, but actually complete it. Um, so with the vanilla game, the rooms all went in a set order. Not the case here. You might pop in to the very first room, and then you might get the 4-pillar room right off the start. And so what you're going to need to do is it's going to kind of require you to navigate, maybe do some checking, trial and error as you work your way through there. So it's a lot of fun, kind of shakes it up. Um, Next big one is the Titan Trove map edit. So what this does in the randomizer is it shifts the Titan and Titan's Cave 1 tile to the left. Um, Effectively, what that does is it requires you to have the ruby to get to those 4 boxes, which is where the Titan's incentive box is at. If this flag is off, he's in his vanilla location. And if you have an airship before you find the ruby, you can just go right in there and get the boxes. So this kind of makes the ruby kind of a more required key item with these particular flags. Left Finish Hospitality adds a inn and a clinic to Lefane. So no more is it just a empty town with a bunch of Lupa men running around. Now you can actually stay at their inn, kind of, res somebody if you need to, do all that fun stuff. Open progression is, I think, one of the bigger ones that will tend to throw off new runners, just because they may not be aware of any particular map edits that open progression adds into the game. So going off the top of my head, and Greg, feel free to jump in if I miss anything. Um, so some of the map edits that are done with the open progression flag is it removes mountains between Canaria and Dwarf Cave, so you can walk from one to the other. It also changes the river system over near Ice Cave, so that way you can get through the entire river system from either end. So you can, if you get the canoe early, you don't have a ship, you could paddle all the way from Provoca down the Crescent, and you can still go in between to Ice Cave and Volcano without having to get out of the river system and dock somewhere else. It also goes through and adds a couple different docks for us. It adds a dock south of Onrak. So if you get an Oxyel early, don't have a canoe, hey, you can go there, dock there, take a little walk up to Onrak and go do Sea Shrine. It also adds a dock to the south end of Mirage Desert. So if you get the chime and potentially the cube early, you can take a dip into Mirage without having to get the airship to get to it.
Yep.
So I believe that's the entirety of those. The other ones that are turned off right now in the middle column, so Zozo Melman just adds certain undead and pirate fights to the desert tiles over in Melmond. So it can be an interesting flag, especially with some of the other ones like Entrance Floor Shuffle, but we're not going to worry about that tonight. Confused Old Men is just kind of, it's a really polarizing flag. Either you love it or you hate it. But instead of having a nice, neat circle, the Crescent Lake Sages all decide to take a walk and wander around aimlessly, and you kind of have to start picking and guessing which one you think is Sarda. I'm sorry, which one is the Sage for his wonderful key item.
Yeah, Lucan.
Mm-hmm. And then extended open progression adds a couple more docks to the world. Also kind of removes a particular river tile to make open early progression potentially more non-linear. So we'll touch on that later. As far as routing goes, so some of the things that we have on, so it's essentially early means to either get more key items or get into ordeals. So with the early starter item in the vanilla game, you needed to kill the vampire to get the ruby, and that was the trigger that would let Sarda give you an item. Not the case here. If you find an airship before you find the ruby, you can fly right to Sarda without ever having gone into Earth Cave potentially, and he'll give you whatever he's got to give you. Same thing with the sages. It's not requiring you to kill Lich before the sages will give you their item. And then early ordeals does not require the crown. So if ordeals is the way you have to go, you don't need the crown to walk in. You can just walk right in and start hopping pillars.
That's right. So we'll go on ahead and go over one of our last little areas here, which is kind of the scaling here. So you see you've got the little slider bars over there. You can either set it to like 100% or you can set it high and it'll give you like kind of a low end and a high end that things can just land. So as you can see, the prices will go 33 to 300%. As far as enemy scaling is concerned, it'll go to 67 to 150. What that means is like an enemy like an ogre, which is an easy one to do because he has 100 health. His health will land either between 67 HP or it'll go all the way up to 150 HP. And that does include attack power and absorb as well. That's the only stats that don't really get affected in that, I think, are end death, and there's something else that doesn't get affected by it. Do you know off the top of your head?
Morale, I think.
Morale, that's the one. Yeah, morale and M-Def. Those are the ones that don't get affected by the scaling like that. And then, of course, boss stats are the same way, 67 to 150. So we'll take another boss like Tiamat, who has 1,000 hit points. So she'll range anywhere between 670 hit points and 1,500 hit points. Our gold P, good lord, EXP and gold boost, we're going to go ahead and boost up your XP to 2.5 times, plus an additional 250 gold. And then you'll get an extra 10% experience per key item. So every key item that you find will bump you up. So we're going to start at 2.7 actually, because we have a free bridge and we have a free canal. And then for every single key item we find, it'll bump it up more. It'll go to 2.8, then 2.9, then all the way up until I think it'll be like 4.5 XP once you get all 20 key items. So it'll be pretty wild. Lastly, we've lowered our overworld encounter rate down to 60% and our dungeon encounter rate down to 80%, just because, nobody likes overworld and dungeon encounters, right? That's not fun.